أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي Selamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will continue with the second station of the 21st word.
The second station of the 21st word. This comprises five cures for five of the heart's wounds. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, and say, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones. And I seek refuge with you, O my sustainer, lest they should come near me. Quran chapter 23, verse 97-98. O one afflicted with the sickness of scruples, do you know what your scruples resemble? A calamity. The more importance they are given, the more they grow. If you give them no importance, they die away. And scruples are whispering, right?
Yes, the
Okay.
vesvese.
Scruples or scruples?
I don't know. It's probably scruples. You're right. The more importance they are given, the more they grow. If you give them no importance, they die away. If you see them as big, they grow bigger. If you see them as small, they grow smaller. If you fear them, they swell and make you ill. If you do not fear them, they are light and remain hidden. If you do not know their true nature, they persist and become established. While if you do know them and recognize them, they disappear. And so I shall explain only five aspects which of the many sorts of these calamitous scruples are those which most frequently occur. Perhaps it may be curative for you and for me, for these scruples are such that ignorance invites them and knowledge repulses them. If you do not recognize them, they come. If you do recognize them, they go. First aspect, first wound. Satan first casts a doubt into the heart. If the heart does not accept it, it turns from a doubt into abuse. It depicts before the imagination some unclean memories and unmannerly, ugly states which resemble abuse and causes the heart to declare, alas, and fall into despair. The person suffering from scruples supposes that he has acted wrongfully before his sustainer and feels a terrible agitation and anxiety. In order to be saved from it, he flees from the divine presence and wants to plunge into heedlessness. The cure for this wound is this: O wretched man suffering from scruples, do not be alarmed, for what comes to your mind is not abuse but something imaginary. And like to imagine unbelief is not unbelief, to imagine abuse is not abuse either. For according to logic, an imagining is not a judgment, and abuse is a judgment. Moreover, those ugly words are not the words of your heart, because your heart is saddened and sorry at them. Rather, they come from the inner faculty situated near the heart, which is a means of satanic whisperings. The harm of scruples is imagining the harm. That is, it is to suffer harm in the heart through imagining them to be harmful. For it is imagining to be reality, and imagining which is devoid of judgment. For it is imagining to be reality, and imagining which is devoid of judgment. Also, it is to attribute to the heart Satan's works, to suppose his words to be from it. Such a person thinks it is harmful, so it becomes harmful. That is anyway what Satan wanted.
We can also read the second aspect.
Second aspect. It is this: when meanings arise in the heart, they enter the imagination stripped of form. It is there that they are clothed in an image or form. The imagination, always affected by some cause, weaves images of a sort. It leaves on the way the images of the things to which it gives importance. It leaves on the way the images of the things to which it gives importance. Whatever meaning passes through it, it either clothes it or wears it or taints it or veils it. If the meanings are pure and clean, and the images dirty and base, there is no clothing, but there is contact. The man with scruples confuses the contact with being clothed. He exclaims, alas, how corrupted my heart has become. This lowness has made me despicable. Satan takes advantage of this vein of his. The cure for such a wound is as follows. Listen, O you unfortunate. Just as outward cleanliness, which is a means to the correct conduct of your prayers, is not affected by the uncleanness of the inside of your inner organs, and is not spoiled by it, so the sacred meanings being close to unclean forms does not harm them. For example, you are reflecting on some divine signs when suddenly you feel ill, or an appetite or a stimulation like a need to pass water. Of course, your imagination will see whatever is necessary to cure the ill or answer the need, and will look at it. Weave lowly forms appropriate to them, and the meanings that arise will pass between them. But there is no harm in their passing, nor soiling, nor error, nor injury. If there is any mistake, it is in paying them attention and imagining the harm.
Jazakallah khair. Osman, would you like to lead the discussion?
Yeah,
No?
thank you.
Aisha, would you like to give a try? You just give orders to people. You don't like it? Hanuma. Then, Yusuf, it's your turn. There is no shake, yeah? Escape from that.
There's no harm.
I tried everyone else. So,
No one online?
oh, no, it's our turn today. So it's your leading time, inshallah. If you are okay with it, of course.
Okay. So,
That's your favorite topic anyway, right?
Brother Bikram, what did you understand from the first paragraph? Anyways, putting joke aside. So, first I was questioning why did the author put this topic in here. In the first one, he was talking about a man who was asking a question saying that prayer is good, but it's too much to do it 5 times. So since it's never ending, it's making us tired. And now in the second station, he now starts talking about the doubts or scruples, not even doubts, but scruples. Any idea about that? Why is he talking about this topic? And also, we can extend the question saying that this is the second station of the 21st word. So he studied several topics up to here, like oneness of the Creator, resurrection, prophethood, scripture, angels, partially in the 15th word. So several things have been studied. Now in here he is talking about this apparently very practical topic. So why is that? Awesome, and Fariha, you're also more than welcome to chime in.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
So what's struck my attention was just the verse itself, where I'm seeking shelter, like help, from whatever I deem not good, whatever I deem unfit to my human expectations, whatever I deem to be what we refer to as evil, as in something not of my liking. It seems that I'm always in need of this. Like I always want every day to be, a good one. I won't, like without any like worry, sorrow, stress, or whatsoever, right? And it's interesting, I think your question was, how come whatever we've been covering as far as we're talking about prayers, right? The last couple of weeks in terms of acknowledgement, expressing your need of seeking out to someone who is a caretaker or taking care of you, and like yet this need of acknowledgement extends to more. As in, I'm always in need to seek protection from falling into any kind of mental state or state of mind, which I know it's not healthy, right? So yeah, I do find myself here in the universe where I'm in need of a protector. I'm in need to connect my everything, my feelings, emotions, to something not of the nature of this universe, to something that, you know, give me some kind of satisfaction, because I cannot hold on to anything of this universe. It's all transient. It's all passing. I cannot even rely on myself. You know, we're all transforming, aging over skills and everything, right? Although we try to keep them sharp, but you know, it's just like water. You can't like really hold on to anything. So I need a source to hold on to. So that's step one, acknowledging that I'm not set to my own devices here, that I have a one or something. I mean, I cannot describe it, but something is bringing me into existence. So just knowing that the existence of a necessarily existent one give me or puts me in comfort, puts my human feelings and qualities in comfort. Good. That's step one. Step two is we're bombarded every day, every moment with different obstacles, with different, you know, it's like we're tackling exercises. So, you know, it's like the teacher, capital T teacher, is giving us various problems. They're like, okay, so you're at this, you know, level now. Let's start doing some level 2 problems, right? And you want to make sure that you're not falling into laziness, into heedlessness, or just, you know, skipping some steps while attempting your problems, right? You want to make sure that you get to your answer in a neat, sophisticated, and easiest way, without any kind of hindrance. So, I mean, it's easy to slip away, and that's why we need, like, again, this sense of needing someone to protect, or sense of needing to stay on the straight path of solving your equation in the right way is a must. Yes, you may get into error where you're not reaching your answer, but you know, the ideal situation is, yeah, I want to reach to my answer and solve it. So yeah, that was my immediate takeaway from what was said. Thank you.
Yes, Brother Birkan. So regarding your question, like why he's talking about, what was the word, Scrabble?
Scruple, yeah.
Scruples, okay. Doubts, I would say. Here, so like just one part of it could be when we look at the ending of the first station. He was saying, beware, do not say, what are my prayers in comparison with the reality of the prayers? So do not belittle yourself, do not belittle what you are doing. Continue doing it, kind of. And the way it started the first station, the guy was asking, actually, like he was sharing his doubts, his struggles about the prayer. And he says, okay, you know, we pray, and he's a strong man. It's obviously not a real, he doesn't have a real reason not to pray. Like he has time, he has power to do it. And he says, it's okay, like I don't see the prayer is wrong. But there's all these, you know, the ideas, or all these feelings, all these doubts or struggles in my mind, questioning why we are praying 5 times. Isn't it enough 1 time, and so on. At the first station, he kind of answered, like I tried to get rid of this, or try to silence. Try to silence these wrong ideas, whisperings. And maybe he's saying that, and this is something normal, like it would happen to everyone. So do not let them to
Take over.
take over, and do not let them to prevent you doing the right thing. So this is one connection I see.
So like up until the 21st verse, right? So when he studied the question, and as Birkan said, like when he asked himself like the question that imaginary person or maybe real person was asking about the wisdom behind like praying 5 times a day, but he listened to himself and he found out that he's asking the same questions, right?
Oh, yes.
So whatever it is with human being. It is there, like within you, that you share the same kind of, let's say, existence. And here, as an answer to that, like he just discusses like anything else, if you experience such an like experience, what must be the truth of it? What must be the reality of it? Or what must be the wisdom behind it? So he discusses the reality of that experience that anyone may have, and also what's the purpose of it, or how you can really, or how one can utilize that to continue with the progress.
The word scruples in here, I guess it's slightly different than doubts, because eventually he's going to make a distinction between scruples and doubts. So I guess scruples in here, because I was checking the translation of the verse, which is translated in here as suggestion. Some other translators used it as a poking. So pokings of Satan. Somebody is coming and disturbing you with poking the finger, something like that. So some disturbance coming from outside. But because, for example, if somebody abuses you verbally with a serious argument, you wouldn't call it as a poking. A poking is somebody comes and just the purpose is to disturb you. Well, I guess there's this sort of a flavor in the concept. Shall we reread the just a second, the document links? Can somebody send the link if you have, please? Yeah, we can read the first paragraph. Read the first paragraph if anybody would like to comment on that. Okay, so I guess I will read it. O one afflicted with sickness of scruples. Again, we are reading from the second station of the 21st word. O one afflicted with the sickness of scruples.
Sorry, before we read the paragraph, should we read the verse as well?
Sure. And say, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions or poking of the evil ones.
I was just trying to send the link.
Okay, sorry for the noise. And say, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones. And I seek refuge with you, O my sustainer, lest they should come near me.
So we will be studying the commentary of this verse.
Yes. O one afflicted with the sickness of scruples. Do you know what your scruples resemble? And by the way, in the original text, the scruples is waswasa. If you would like to go back to, because Quran uses this word as well. Do you know what your scruples resemble? A calamity. The more importance they are given, the more they grow. If you give them no importance, they die away. If you see them as big, they grow bigger. If you see them as small, they grow smaller. If you fear them, they swell and make you ill. If you do not fear them, They are light and remain hidden. If you do not know their true nature, they persist and become established. While if you do know them and recognize them, they disappear. And so I shall explain only 5 aspects which of the many sorts of these calamitous scruples are those which most frequently occur. Perhaps it may be curative for you and for me, for these scruples are such that ignorance invites them and knowledge repulses them. If you do not recognize them, they come. If you do recognize them, they go. So, any comments about this introduction? Why did he define scruples as a sickness? He said it's a calamity. If you give importance to it, it grows, so on and so forth. As if he's saying, ignore them. Shall I ignore my questions? What does he mean in here?
I think he means the exact opposite. If you have questions, so when you question something or when you focus on something and it goes away, that means that that thing you were scared of was a lie. Like if it was truth, like if I was scared that the sun didn't exist, something ridiculous, something like that. You know, if I was scared of this, if I ever focused and then like researched if the sun did exist, then it wouldn't go away. It would just be solidified. But if it was a false claim or a false thought, then once I actually research it and I realize it's false, then it goes away. So something that goes away after you look into it must already be false, and that's what he's saying here. That's what I understand.
So then how about this? The more importance they are given, the more they grow. If you give them no importance, they die away.
That's like the opposite of what I said, right?
So maybe it's not like opposing each other, but he is defining a case in which all of them needs to be together, maybe. So not giving importance to the scruples, but not shying away from it, I don't know. But something like that. Otherwise, this paragraph would be contradictory.
So just one thing. So this paragraph, the first aspect, second aspect, I guess these scruples,
Let's call it scruples for today.
these waswasa.
Okay.
I'm not sure he's talking about things like, a false idea of, maybe there's no God, or maybe, there are 2 gods, or whatever. I'm not sure he's talking about such waswasa here. More like he's talking about things that that would make you feel bad, ashamed, so that you would be in despair and like you won't be in peace with yourself. Otherwise, because when we look at this first wound, the second wound, and so on, the things he prescribes to cure them, they're not like logical arguments to trying to tell you that, or trying to prove that, there is a God, so do not fall into them, or they don't make sense, so do not be overwhelmed with them. Rather, he's trying to show that there are these shameful, or maybe there are these things in your heart that you do not want to attribute to yourself, that you don't want to you don't want to see yourself with them. Don't be worried that they don't belong here, he says. And so, anyway, what I'm trying to say, I guess, these scruples he's talking about here are not the ones that, like a false claims of something. Or maybe God is not unique, maybe there's no God. I'm not sure he's talking about this part, the kind of scruples here.
In the verse, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones. So, what does evil ones really represent? Versus seeking refuge with God. Isn't that evil like represents the non-existence of something, or it's like non-existence itself? So in that case, like that's what the evil is, or satanic is. Scruples also must be understood in the same line. Whatever the suggestions, like one experience, whether it is related to belief or related to something that one be ashamed of, shouldn't it be like something that has no basis or like some reality? For example, like let's say that I have this like scruples that's like whispering in my ears that there is no God. It could be very well possible. So is there any basis for that kind of alternative, like whisperings versus so there are two alternatives, right? Either God exists or he doesn't exist. And is there any kind of basis to that, like alternative claim or the like whispering? Or you can think of the same thing with like a more practical example, what like you refer to. In either case, like it must refer to this aspect or like side of the human being that we all experience, like the author did in the first part of the 21st word, coming with an alternative like suggestion to you. And it is up to you to understand what that is and what is the purpose of that, what is the reality of that, or if there is any reality of that suggestion, and judge accordingly or make your mind accordingly. But at the same time, there is this like seek refuge with you from, and lest they should come near me. There is this aspect that like you also like shy away from it, even though you experience it, but at the same time you are not comfortable, so you don't want to go through that kind of experience. And I'm not quite sure what like exactly verse refers to with that statement. Like what does it really mean?
Feriha is making a comment in the form of a question. Are scruples uninvited messengers? She says.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe messengers in the form of
Evil.
Okay. Yes, Suhail, go ahead.
But maybe I didn't understand Osman's question fully, but at least how I understand the verses is that in one sense, the first verse, وَقُلْ رَبِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَّزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ, like it's as if like there's a recognition from the human being that, and kind of what Nursi is saying is that you need to recognize first what are these sort of suggestions, so in that sense, knowing them, what they are, is important. Otherwise, how does one seek refuge? How can you then say, "A'udhu bika, I seek refuge in you," if you don't know what they are? The question is, though, what do you do with them? Do you seek refuge in the Lord or in the Sustainer? Or as Nursi says, do you give them some importance? Make them bigger than what they are. In a sense, what Nursi is saying, I think, is that their importance pertains to seeking refuge in him. That's really why they're there. But if you give them some importance more than that, as if like they have value in and of themselves for their own sake, then you fall into despair. And then the next verse is "A'udhu bika Rabbi an yahdurun," lest they be present, come near me. So you don't want them, but what you do want is to, refuge in the creator, the one in which you don't find any scruples, or you don't find any sort of evil suggestions. But if you don't have a recognition, if you aren't aware, then there would not be any refuge seeking to begin with. And as Nursi's saying, the issue is if we don't see it in that way. If we in and of themselves give them importance for their own sake, as if they matter, as if not pointing to anything else, then of course they're going to become big. They become a part of us, as the verse says. We don't want them to be, because we fail to realize that they're there. So I know that I'm not those things. As Osman said, if I have this sort of doubt that there is not a creator, or some idea, it's there to show me that that's not compatible with me. That's not who I am. But if I take it if I don't address it in that way, and I say, and I give that idea importance, then at some point, like, it resides within me to say that, well, there must not be a creator to the whole universe. But I miss the whole point of what it's there for. It's essentially to show me that I don't want those things. That's not who I am. Those things, those ideas, as Birkan says, like, these waswas are not compatible with my, human faculties, my qualities.
The one point about the paragraph, the first paragraph again, the way it reads, it's like he's defining, he's saying that everything has a purpose. So if you know the purpose, you are good. But if you confuse purposes of things, then this is the mistake, and probably the harm will come from this confusion. So for instance, it says, perhaps it may be creative for you and for me, for these scruples are such that ignorance invites them and knowledge repulses them. If you do not recognize them, they come. If you recognize them, they go. So you can take it as, just realize they are lies, so you are fine. But also it reads as if, it defines a purpose even for these scruples, for waswasa. But you should know what they are, and you should know what their purpose is. If you do not confuse them with something else, then there is no harm, he says.
If you know the purpose and the reality of it, then it becomes like a useful tool for you to develop yourself. But if you take them as they are to be true, then it can mess you up, like, in your mind, so it's not like, in one way, like, it is not something to be shy away from it, but at the same time keeping in mind that if you're not using for the right purpose, then you can, they can stray you from the right path, whatever that means.
It means what?
That, remind me when I was a child, there was something hanging from the door, and it was during the night time, and there was a shadow, with the door constantly moving, and the shadow was also moving, and I imagined it to be some sort of monster. I remember that, and so in reality there is no such thing, right? There is no monster.
There is no.
At least in that specific case. But if that's how I perceive it to be, and if I take it serious, and if I live with that understanding, that's very dreadful. So it seems like the scruples are same kind of situation, that on one hand they don't have that any kind of basis or reality, But on the other hand, like it is almost necessary for your own belief process to be able to seek refuge with the Creator. So like it's almost like an moving force for you to push you closer to the Creator.
And this is how verse summarizes it, right? It's in the Quran, the Creator says, "O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones." So evil ones, the suggestion of the evil ones are there so that you seek refuge.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes. So, yeah, go ahead.
What is the reality of the scripts?
Yeah. And in the last sentence of the paragraph, he says, "Perhaps it may be curative for you and for me, for these scruples are such that ignorance invites them and knowledge repulses them. If you do not recognize them, they come. If you do recognize them, they go." So as Fariha was saying, they are coming uninvited, and being messenger, not messenger, another issue. And yeah, I mean, she's right. They can be considered as a messenger because maybe not directly they are teaching me something, but through them, I get to learn something. It is like the bully or at the school. The guy teaches you how to fight. Otherwise, you get beaten badly. So would you consider a bullying kid as a messenger? Not really. But eventually you learn how to fight because of this bullying kid. So he says ignorance invites them. So as much as I'm ignorant of something, then I am making myself available for being exploited. But knowledge repulses them. As much as you know what's going on, you would be safe. And I guess this is why, going back to the initial verse, I would like to locate myself within my Creator knowledge, not the non-existence and the ignorance. And by saying that, lest they should not come near me, as if I would like to stay in the zone of light, not in the zone of darkness. Because as much as I stay in light, then, for example, this room has a light, and as I stay in here, darkness cannot come to me. But if I start walking to the other room, then the darkness comes to me, or I go towards darkness. So in here, locating myself with the consciousness of my Maker, being aware of Him in whichever dimension I am, and by dimension what I mean is, in terms of knowing mercy of my Creator, I might be knowledgeable, quote-unquote knowledgeable or secure, let's say, but when it comes to His sustainership, I might be in darkness. Still, I might be thinking that nature gives it to me, whatever.
Your father. Your father.
My father might be giving it to me. So in that sense, for instance, I am inviting scruples to me. Yes, go ahead, please.
Well, it's kind of unrelated, but Osman, what he was saying about kind of giving things that aren't real importance, it reminds me of like Nursi, kind of one of my favorite words that Nursi says. He says, do not weep before being beaten. Do not be afraid of nothing. Do not give non-being the color of being. That's kind of what we do to these scruples. We give them some sort of reality when they're not. If we really think about them, what their purpose is, they have no real tangible reality in that there's no validity to them. They don't make sense to the human being. And if we understand them in that way, in what their purpose is, and showing us, what the truth is, what it must be, and who we must, return to. That's really what seeking refuge in is, finding who I must return to. Where's my destination, my end? then we really utilize the true purpose. Otherwise, you would have to ask the question: what is the reason, the necessity in giving existence to these sort of ideas? You know, yeah, they may be whisperings, but I mean, that is the construction of the universe that the creator of the universe intended. He willed it to be in this way. So what is really the purpose of the existence of these things? And if we just use them to say, oh, I don't like them, and that's it, rather than what the verse says, the point being, I seek refuge. It's supposed to take me somewhere. There needs to be an end to these false ideas.
So in order to support Fariha, since she is my study partner in my study group, so about these messengership. So I guess we can also take this, the ignorance invites them and knowledge propulses them in another way as well. Not as, they come because you are ignorant, and in order to get rid of them, you shouldn't be ignorant. I guess we can also read this as, when you are ignorant, they come as a warning, telling you that because you are ignorant, you should, get rid of this ignorance, not me, because I'm the warner.
Because you are the one who is suffering from it.
Yes, you are the one who is suffering from that, exactly. So I was sent as a warning, so utilize me to seek refuge. But instead, what we do, we confuse them with something else, and let's say we get lost in the content of it. For instance, we are praying and we are ignorant during the prayer, and all these nasty ideas comes to mind. If we get lost with the content, as they become obviously not a messenger. But if we take them as, astaghfirullah, like I should take refuge and concentrate my prayer, then they become as a messenger. So I was trying to find an example, a stupid example came to my mind, so I'm sorry, not as elegant as your examples.
We are talking about Satan.
So let's say you are lost in the middle of the ocean, you are so hungry, and you're trying to find something to eat in a small, boat. You're trying to find something to eat, you cannot find it, and you don't even know where to go. If you knew where to go, you would at least find somewhere and find some eating, the food. And out of nowhere, a compass. You find a compass in your pocket, let's say. So if you try to eat it, right, it will definitely harm you. So you can read this story as, we shouldn't, try to eat compasses because they are not good for food. And this is the lesson. So yes, we will take these scrabbles as something, not as a messenger. But if we take the compass as compass, telling that, thinking that it's trying to help us with our hunger, or trying to get us out of our state of hunger, and we will use it properly, seek refuge, in this context, and find our way. So in that sense, I guess they could be taken as messenger.
I think they are instrumental for man's free will to exercise. If you remember the story of Adam and Eve, Satan comes and the situation saying that if you eat from that fruit, that will be an everlasting reward for you, which turns out to be exactly the opposite. So came up with a claim that has no basis, and upon that Adam and Eve expelled from the paradise, then to earth, where they needed to exercise the free will, in terms of using in a way to get back to the like origin or closer to God. So I think like this is also in parallel to that story that like in that sense like it is also like essential for man to be able to practice the free will, because in order to do that like you need an alternative, truth versus falsehood, and you should be able to choose in between. In order to be able to do that, like there needs to be an alternative, whether like it is true, like there needs to be an alternative to the truth, and that's what the scruples represents in a way.
Fariha made a comment, but scruples are not real, essentially. Fariha, would you like to comment on that? Because it was said within a context. And then Asim will talk next, inshallah.
Yeah, because if we take them as a way to make me realize what the reality is, so you know how we say evil is really experiencing lack of confirmation of the truth. So in reality, whatever does not have existence, then essentially, I mean, it does not exist, and so it's not real. But if I do find myself perceiving evil, let's leave it to evil, or perceiving false, or not confirming the truth, then yeah, so it's like you guys were saying, it's a warning or a wake-up call for me to utilize them and then to get back on track, or to at least confirm the truth. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Asim, your hand was up.
Yeah, so I have a question. I'm going a little back on the, why are we afflicted with this sickness of scruples? Do I really need it, or do I, like for example, in the previous section, we were discussing prayers. And from that section, I realized as a being that definitely I am, in need of the prayers, because I know that, this life is not the only thing, and I have some human things that I need them to be addressed. So that's good. And now the second station somehow said, hey, you are also afflicted with, this sickness of scruples. So I was thinking, really, am I, because I, normally I would think, all the distinction between the truth and falsehood, normally I should be able to do that, just like in terms of, when someone thinks of their prayers, right, really think life is going on, do I really need the prayers? Same thing, I can have the same sense or idea that, really, of course I would like to go with the truth. Nobody would want to go with the false. And although these ideas may be coming, it should still be, I should be able to go and figure that out. So is there like somebody can give an example on how, like in our daily, how we can really like experience this kind of, in terms of, I do go through these, and definitely I'm in need of them to actually make them useful, as was being said, that, this is something, I know Osman was a good point, that he said that we need that to distinguish, otherwise we wouldn't know what true and false is. So this is something necessary for us. Well, how do we make it a little more practical in our day-to-day kind of routines?
So before giving microphone to Suhail, I will read the comment from Fariha. She says, yes, we need scruples like a teacher. Like a teacher puts in a trick question on the exam to enhance your understanding of that which is truth. Thank you. And now Suhail, go ahead.
Well, to answer Asim's question, kind of day-to-day life, if I, let's say, something or someone makes me happy, it could be as simple as, let's say, at least where I live, today was a warm day, and it was nice to walk outside and enjoy like the scenery or something like that. You know, a scruple, I mean, however you maybe think this is not like trivial, but it's like maybe an everyday occurrence. Maybe I, ascribe some sort of, happiness or pleasure to things as they are. That's the reason I'm happy. Just a thought, like it. I don't necessarily like. I'm not saying like I choose. That's the way I want to, but it just comes to me. Oh, look how nice the trees are, or the sun is, or the weather is, or how warm it is outside. It just happens to be that way. And I just kind of go about thinking that way. Unless I kind of rearrange, and maybe the idea presents itself that, these things are doing them for me, or they're on their own sake, then I can be led down the wrong road. Or maybe even like a more tangible example is, let's say somebody dies, or somebody passes away, dies, and you're sad. Maybe the thought comes across, will I ever see them again? Do they simply fade away into the void of non-existence? What's going to happen to them? These thoughts just come. They're they just happen to the human spirit when, let's say, somebody dies. The question is then, what do you do with those sort of ideas that may not be necessarily true? Especially like I feel like these things often happen when things don't match up with our expectations. Like if somebody, let's say, not just somebody who dies, but let's say somebody was innocently killed, then we may get the idea, oh, really? Is there really a just creator? Is there really a merciful and compassionate creator to the universe? Is that really the case? That's when things really, I guess, become apparent, is when things don't match with our expectations, which happens quite often. And the question is, how do you utilize those experiences in the right way, as the verse says, to seeking refuge in the Lord of the universe? Are you using them to as a means that point to him, so you draw to him, or reach or take whatever that sort of whisper you had and go back to him? Or do you say, oh, well, maybe that's really the case. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's a creator, but he's unjust, or he's not compassionate, or he's uncaring. So that happens all the time.
Can I? Okay. So the way, like as an overall picture, the way I see what is told here, so with the scruples, I don't think the author is suggesting that there's something really nice, that we should be happy to have them, or, yay, we have these scruples, the human being should have scruples. So I guess we shouldn't also go this direction as well, like to this extreme, saying that having all these doubts or vesvese, all these scruples is what makes us great. We need them. So I will give another example from Quran. I'm not suggesting they are same, but just to make it clear, at least how I understand, is, for instance, in Quran, the Creator says, and we send our demons, Zabani, right, to, let's say, unbelievers. Or wordings can change, but Zabanis will go and take them. So, yes, there is one aspect of such words giving me a peace. Because when I read them, I take them as, oh, that's great, alhamdulillah. That means when I go astray, right? When I do something wrong, there will be a warner. Like my creator will warn me, right? With quote unquote, let's say, punishment. And I take it as, alhamdulillah, I'm not alone. But this doesn't mean that I should be striving for being an unbeliever, or I should be striving for being warned. Something like, when you have, let's say, a tumor, it is good that to take it out by cutting it, let's say. And cutting will hurt you. So in this context, when you have the tumor, it is good to have this cut. But it doesn't mean that as a human being, I should strive for cut, or I should be proud of, being cut, or having the tumor, let's say.
Please cut me.
Yes, please cut me because, this is what make me stronger or whatever. So I take these struggles in that way. Yes, they are messengers. When I'm, as he says, ignorant, in the context of ignorance, they come as messengers and warn me so that I take refuge, let's say, to the God. Or they, again, quote unquote, trick my mind so that I get confused, so that I check myself, where I stand. Like, for instance, a doubt in the creator is good in that sense, like when I'm ignorant, when I take everything like my belief as granted, when I'm ignorant in terms of my belief, a doubt is good, yes, but it doesn't mean that, we should, looking for doubts, or as doubts come to our minds, we should feel ourselves good. As much as doubt I have, I'm a better intellectual or better whatever. It's just a sign that you are ignorant, that you should, check yourself.
And I guess this would be an ignorance of not understanding the question and answer part of it.
Yes.
Is the purpose questioning, or is the purpose finding answers? So this is why being obsessive about asking questions makes it into the purpose. Our purpose is asking questions, not finding answers, as the modern philosophy does. The point is not to find answers. The point is just to ask questions. So this is, I guess, another version of being ignorant of, then what's the purpose of asking a question if my purpose is not to find an answer? And the truth. He made a comment when Suhail was speaking, right? We always have this worry of future. And for the examples, as Asim was asking, so actually in the previous text, we have seen examples of it. Maybe one large example was when we were studying the 15th word, when Nursi was talking about stoning or shooting stars. And in the case study of this shooting stars, when we were studying this verse, he was saying that he was listening to some a person who memorized Quran, reciting Quran, and he says, I heard a voice, I didn't see where it is coming from, but the voice was asking such a question. Then he tells us his conversation with this whisperer and how he's responding, and he was using it as a interpretation of the verse, which says, at the end he said, take a stone from this verse and throw it to your Satan to repel. Then again, a few months back when we were studying 20th word, in there we were talking about the verse which says, and their hearts hardened so much so that it even became harder than rocks. And rocks are such and such and such. Then there was a description of rocks. In there, Nursi was again saying that then the whisperer said, why is Quran talking about these natural states of rocks? What's the point of telling me? So I guess these sorts of questions are the whispers that are happening here and there. And now that we saw some examples of it, my understanding of why Nursi is putting this into this 21st word, as if now he is saying that you also need to learn how to handle those questions. Those questions will be there for keeping you awake, or as we have been saying, for encouraging you in your journey to find truth. But they might overwhelm you as well, like in the example of philosophers that we just said. So instead of finding an answer, you might say that, okay, asking questions were good. It made us find answers, lead us to truth. But you might get obsessed with asking questions and even forget your aim of finding answers. This might be another version of obsession or whispers.
They are not desirable, but they are necessary for your progress.
Yes. So this is why, in general, I am saying this, the second station of 21st word, as learn how to control or deal with those questions, how to utilize them, not be a puppet of those questions, but instead utilize them for your purpose, for your advance.
Another maybe practical example would be like not struggles into the form of doubts, but struggles in form of again like a dirty ideas or the feelings. For instance, if you enter a place which is like a morally inappropriate, let's say, you find yourself in a context which is morally, not appropriate. Again, I couldn't find another word. Sorry. Then most probably some dirty ideas will come to your mind, and you feel ashamed of them. And instead of, for instance, in the first aspect, it says that this could lead you in a total heedlessness, because you would say, okay, what a dirty person I am, right? And there is no escape from that. There is no salvation for me. So, let's take it to the end. But instead, author says, no, take this feeling of the shame or these dirty ideas as a warning for you, and get rid of this place that you are. So, they have a utility, but the utility is not in the context. It's not about like a dirty idea, dirtiness of the idea. You don't have to analyze, what is inside all these like the nasty images you have in your mind. You don't have to analyze them. Just take them as warning. That's something that you don't want to.
And Lucy is going to give different examples so that I guess we can find, and I guess we will find bits and pieces of all those examples throughout our life. But even, for instance, once you get off the car, after walking 20 steps, turning back and, did I lock the car? When this idea comes, and if this is something that happens repetitively to you, this idea is okay, it's good for security of your car. It's good that you have such worries. And you wouldn't have such a worry if you are a careful person. Each and every time, knowingly and consciously, you lock your car. But if you are becoming ignorant or maybe lightheaded, whatever, then after 20 steps, you might need to turn back and check it again. But it happens that, in practical life, people might show it in different aspects. Some people show it more, some people show it less. It might even become sort of an obsession. You turn back, lock it, turn back again, walk a few more paces and say, did it really lock now? I saw that the front light is lit up and blinked, but maybe I clicked it twice. So, you can go nuts like this. So, this is the very basic form of it, but this is why he starts with maybe taking wudu or things like that. And we happen to see people like this.
Perfection part, right? So maybe fourth aspect.
Yeah, whichever. Then, and I guess I don't want to get into the psychiatry or neurology side of it, but it sounds very much like obsessive compulsive disorder sort of a thing. But eventually, Nursi is going to carry it to the fifth. In the fifth aspect, he says this will touch belief. So when it touches this belief aspect, I mean, all of the five in here are about belief, but the fifth one is especially about the serious questions now. It's not about is my wudu void or not, or in my head I am having this, because I heard this from different people as well. I am cursing the creator. I am cursing the prophet from inside. For example, that person says, a very sensitive person, but the person is very much worried about what's going on inside. So shall this person be worried? And we can say that, well, this is a very, maybe a psychological issue, that person is weak, whatever. But as Nursi is going through the fifth aspect, saying that everybody has a share in that. This is why he starts in the starting paragraph, so that it's going to be curative for you and me, he says. So we are going to have bits and pieces here and there in this spectrum of disorder.
I think that's probably the very same reason why I think it is. The one aspect of it is they are there for you to practice or exercise your freedom. Because if you have a power of choice, are you gonna make the decision, or your like whims and like whisperings are gonna make the decision for you? So like in that sense, I'm not sure if it is like I don't know. I'm just speculating. Like I am a very sensitive personality or weak personality. That's why I fell into this like misery. I don't know if that would be like an acceptable, in this context, it would be an acceptable excuse, because that is the whole purpose for you not to be like in that way. That is the reason why they are given to you, so you can utilize it to, if you like, enhance your power of choice. You control them instead of they control you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in the first paragraph, actually, this is where this is bringing it to. If you know it, it goes away. So it's not that you are doomed to be as such. It's not that, well, this is how I am created, how I am made, I am weak. Again, some people are being stronger bodily. Likewise, psychologically, it might be the case. But still, in the first paragraph, the way I read it is, it's not that you are doomed like this. Some people are being maybe tested or trained more with this than the others. But especially in this age, because in other writings of Nursi, at some point I was having such issues. This is why I compiled writings of Nursi just about this topic. And I remember it was like maybe 40, 50 pages of text. In his writings, he discusses this topic here and there, at least this much. You see that in this age, these doubts are all over the place, and you cannot control it. Because maybe an unexpected version of it is, we go and a new phone comes out, and we feel urge to sell our 1-year-old phone and buy a new phone. And we feel like if I don't buy it, people are going to laugh at me. So I guess this is another form of baseless claim, which everybody's falling down for. Or maybe a tweet is trending in Twitter, and since I hear it too much, oh, look, 45,000 people retweeted this, so there must be some truth in it. And hearing it several times, this is what media is doing nowadays. Or I am hearing that such and such number of scientists are saying that evolution, it happens by itself. And I keep hearing these words.
Twitter itself is discrepancy.
Yeah, Twitter is just something is tweet. So then I feel like maybe it's the truth. So this is why it's becoming maybe even more prevalent than we think about it. Suhail, go ahead, please.
Yeah, to go back to what Osman said about choice, it's like, and back to what Berkan said, I mean, nobody wants to fail an exam, but failure has to be present. Otherwise, it's not an examination. What's the point of having an examination then? If there's not the possibility of failure, not that you want it, but only because there's a possibility of failure, is there the recognition that you have the ability to choose not to study, and knowing that you do not want to fail? That's what makes you human. So it's interesting when people say like, oh, I wish there were no, like, I wish I didn't have these things. Well, you can't say I don't, in one sense, I wish they didn't even exist. And on the other hand, say, I wish I had free choice. Because the whole point of having choice is, the only reason choice exists is because those things that you don't want exist. Otherwise, there's no choice to be made. What are you choosing then? Nothing, really. You're not human. So you don't want it, but they're necessary. And they're necessary because you have the choice or will. And having will makes those things necessary to exist in that sense. Otherwise, there's no such thing as will from your perspective.
Any other comments? If not, we can go with the first aspect, first wound. Brother Abdurrahman, would you like to read us the first wound?
I already did. Read it again.
Once more. You liked it.
Your lovely voices.
Maybe you should make the other lovely voice read it.
They speak a lot
Okay.
already.
First aspect, first wound. Satan first casts a doubt into the heart. If the heart does not accept it, it turns from a doubt into abuse. It depicts before the imagination some unclean memories and unmannerly, ugly states which resemble abuse, and causes the heart to declare, alas, and fall into despair. The person suffering from scruples supposes that he has acted wrongfully before his sustainer, and feels a terrible agitation and anxiety. In order to be saved from it, he flees from the divine presence and wants to plunge into heedlessness. The cure for this wound is this. O wretched man suffering from scruples, do not be alarmed, for what comes to your mind is not abuse, but something imaginary. And like to imagine unbelief is not unbelief, to imagine abuse is not abuse either. For according to logic, an imagining is not a judgment, and abuse is a judgment. And imagining is not a judgment, abuse is a judgment. Moreover, those ugly words are not the words of your heart, because your heart is saddened and sorry at them. Rather, they come from the inner faculty situated near the heart, which is a means of satanic whisperings. The harm of scruples is imagining the harm. That is, it is to suffer harm in the heart through imagining them to be harmful. For it is imagining to be a reality, and imagining which is devoid of judgment. Also, it is to attribute to the heart Satan's works, to suppose his words to be from it. Such a person thinks it is harmful, so it becomes harmful. That is anyway what Satan wanted.
Yes. Any comments about this one? Looks like nobody have experienced anything like that.
I was thinking just the opposite.
No, everybody is guilty of this.
No, I was saying that it's good to know that it's not me only. That at least Alter knows about it.
Good. You find somebody at least who is. So there's a comment. It's interesting how everything is a judgment or perception from my end.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is what?
It's interesting. Everything is a judgment or perception from my end, says Farihad. And Asim is asking, how does the doubt become abuse? So, Farihad, would you like to expound on your statement? And then we will talk about Asim's question.
Yeah, I mean, basically just commenting on what the author mentioned, that, where does he say? yeah, like according to logic, an imagination is not a judgment. I mean, we're imagining something. An abuse is a judgment. So I think it's something that one inflicts upon themselves, right? And so it becomes, I mean, if you feel that you're being treated a certain way, so let's say student-teacher relationship, the teacher is concerned about the student, hey, he gotta do this, some makeup work, extra credit, and so on and so forth. Student may take it as, oh, I'm being abused by my teacher, right? The teacher keeps like pouring all this work, extra work on me, and so on the part of the student, he may feel that he or she is being abused, and that's really a judgment. I mean, it's a perception. That's how you're perceiving things. Whereas the reality is that the teacher is concerned about the student. Teacher doesn't want the student to fail. And so, the teacher is providing opportunities for the student. And so I was saying that whatever I take in as a student is really my judgment of how I'm viewing things or perceiving things. And so the abuse part is really how I'm perceiving things. That's all I wanted to say.
And Austin is asking, how does the doubt become abuse? The word abuse was a little bit puzzling for me. I need to go back to the text. It's like vulgar words, bad words that you cast upon somebody, like swearing to someone.
That's why, like, original one even is more difficult to understand the translation. Because, like, abuse and doubt, like, in the original language, I couldn't, like, connect it to.
So an example that comes to my mind in this case is, let's say, somewhere you see, I don't know if this might be a proper thing, but you see that wars are happening, kids are dying. And then a doubt would be, is there a merciful creator? Sort of a question. But if your heart is not really there, and if you're not, let's say you have enough reasons to believe in a merciful creator, this is why my heart wouldn't accept such a doubt in the first place. I mean, it might accept if I don't have enough of a conviction, but it might be that I have some sort of a conviction. Then this question comes, but then a question might arise in the form of a curse, saying that cursing whoever is letting those kids to be killed or abused, then, because this is what he says, then this person becomes very much excited, as if thinking that, how come I am now starting to curse the creator? Because the creator is certainly letting, because now we are talking about a person who has some sort of a conviction. Now this person is receiving some sort of a reaction from inside in the form of the one that allows all these to happen to the kids. Oh man, this is horrible, sort of now. And since it is in the form of a statement now, it's not in the form of a question, it's in the form of a statement. Because doubt would be, what if? Where is? So we are asking a question in the doubt. But in the form of a abuse in here, or in the form of swearing someone, you are passing a judgment. You're saying that this such a being is cruel, so bad, and then you start cursing maybe. This is what makes you get excited, because it's not in the form of a question anymore.
But like right after that, it talks about, like, it depicts before the imagination some unclean memories and unmannerly, ugly states which resemble abuse, and cause the heart to declare alas and fall into despair. So it seems like here, like, it talks about the individual itself, right? So, like, as an individual, I may have, like, some, like, whatever the unclean memories and all the states that he's referring to. I may have those, like, I may be in those states in relation to the Creator, right? And that's what puts me into despair, because I'm, like, then I start thinking that, like, I'm such an horrible person that's how I feel about my creator. So I'm not really worthy of like be with him, then that like kind of puts me in a despair and like pushes me further away from God. So I couldn't make the connection between the first sentence and that second part. Like I just couldn't follow.
First sentence, you mean
which-
Satan first cast the doubt?
Cast out into the heart, then it becomes like abuse, doubt, abuse. I couldn't establish the connection between the two. But like, do you think this has something to do with, since like the whole purpose of the Satan is to lead man to hopelessness and despair? Do you think this has something to do with like man also like seeking for perfection, but like in relation to God, there is no way like that one can achieve that because He is the all perfect one.
He will come to this in the, I guess, the fourth aspect. So it is related. Yeah.
Do you think like that's kind of the excuse? That's how like, let's say like Satan plays with the mind of the individual. Oh, since you are not able to achieve the perfection, you are not worthy of Him. So what's the point of like entertaining the idea of being God at all?
So maybe, but in here, the way I say it about it is this person is getting excited saying that as if I am not cursing my maker. So it's not about not becoming better, but feeling horrible because I'm feeling like I am cursing the creator. And it's a statement. Go ahead.
No, please. I'm done. So the way I see it, like practically speaking, just a practical example would be, I guess you see something bad, ugly, and as Yusuf said, like you just curse, like such a X and X, Y. Right? You say some bad words. I guess just as a practical example, the author talks about in such a state that you see something ugly, or you think that it's ugly, you see something undesirable, and then it becomes a curse, and then it takes you in a situation that you don't like the way it is created and so on, and you say, what I did, like I didn't like how it is created, or I said something bad about the creation, about my creator, and you fall into despair. And this is like happens to me all the time. Like when I get excited with something bad, all these bad things come to my mind. And author says, just because they come to your mind, just you have these words like abuse words or swearings in your mind, it doesn't mean that you make this judgment and you decided it's really deserves such a swear and you're now swearing. It doesn't mean that, so don't be worried. So they just come to your mind, and it doesn't mean that you really doing it. Again, this is just superficial, at the surface level reading it. Like this is the practical example.
Does it also mean maybe or implication that like human imagination is out of the like control of like human like will, power of choice? So it kind of, even though it comes to your imagination in certain, like let's say you imagine the God to be a certain way, but you are not really responsible of it because you are not really exercising your free will because it is out of your control.
I guess yes. My imagination is, I can willingly imagine something for sure, but there are also things that come to my imagination totally uninvited. So am I responsible? Are they within my responsibility? I guess this is what.
So that is the gist of the matter then. Like it is discussing whether that is your responsibility or not, whether you are exercising your free will to make the judgment and come to a firm conclusion or not.
Yes. And with the first sentence, I think it's really interesting. If I'm not getting it wrong, like it's really encrypted, yes. It says Satan first cast a doubt into the heart. If the heart does not accept it, the original text also almost same, so it's not an issue of translation. If the heart does not accept it, it turns from a doubt into abuse. So I just realized again, I might be misreading it, but so what is our usual thing? We see something, let's say, undesirable. We get angry, let's say, and we start cursing. So the way we see it as if there's a causal relation between the two. That I didn't like something, therefore I'm cursing. But author says something different. It says this doubt or not liking it, it was given to your heart. And your heart didn't like it. Your heart didn't accept it. Like you calling it as undesirable, you calling it as hateful or whatever, but your heart doesn't see it that way. It doesn't accept this hate, or it doesn't accept this undesirableness of the event. And then, as a next step, this thought turns into an abuse. It's not that there is really something undesirable and you are you are swearing. This is not true. The author says no. You thought, or this doubt was given to you, saying that this is so ugly, or what my boss telling me is unacceptable. You take it to your heart, and your heart says, no, Birkat, this is not true. There is nothing ugly there. So it doesn't survive there. So then, as a next step, it becomes a swear.
Regardless of the doubt, like the abuse and all those words, like, do you think that is more importantly, actually, author talks about the firm conviction takes place in the heart about the truthfulness of something, right? If your heart, like if you feel secure and at peace, like in your heart that, yeah, this is the truth, and that's what the conviction is. But as opposed to that, like in imagination, is like out of your control. But in order for something to be established in the heart, like you also need to use your free will, investigate, and collect evidences to establish that, whatever the truth it may be. So do you think like he kind of also like analyzes human being in that sense, telling like, hey, listen, like even though like these are the experiences you go through, since your heart is not convinced about or like is annoyed with whatever the thing that you imagine, that is an evidence that like you are not convinced about it because imagination is out of your control, but conviction is, and you should worry about like what's in your heart rather than what's your imagination.
Yes. So he's training different levels of consciousness and saying that do not mix the two. Some statement in your imagination is not a statement in your heart. A statement in heart means I accept this. That's why he said, if the heart does not accept, because it might be the case that my heart might accept it. I might be a man which are really an enemy of the Creator, and a statement comes and I say, yeah, I 100% agree with that. But if it does not, then still it can happen. It might sound to me, if I don't pay attention, that it sounds very much like a statement that I accept, but in fact I'm not. Suhail was reading, and then I'm going to read Asim. Go ahead, Suhail.
No, it's okay. You guys, there really wasn't much to add other than, I mean, to me, just what I took away from it, as you all said, is that these things that they can happen, they can spontaneously come to man's heart, but that doesn't make man those things. Doesn't mean man necessarily believes in those things, is certain of those things. but what the issue comes is that if we take them to be something from within ourselves, as the verse, going back to the verse, as if something within ourselves, and as Osman said, that comes to the fact that man desires the perfection of things, including the perfection of the self. He doesn't want to think evil thoughts or untrue ideas, but they happen to come to him all the time. So it sort of a means, the abuse comes from when we sort of give those ideas reality as if they come from within us. And that's where the abuse stems from. That's the judgment. It's like a judgment upon ourselves. We place a false judgment upon ourselves, thinking these ideas are who we are. In a sense, it's kind of relates to me personally about the topic about whether what one believes in necessitates how one acts in the world, which is like a different topic that Nursi talks about elsewhere. But if you believe something, if you're certain of the truth, does it really necessitate that you that you act on that belief? You know, maybe you believe that prayer is a good thing. You're certain that you should pray. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pray or not. But does you not praying say you're not certain of the necessity of prayer? No. The issue is, if you don't pray, do you then say it implies that I don't believe in the necessity of prayer? That's casting false judgment upon the self. And it can lead you to even possibly deny prayer, the necessity of prayer, the importance of prayer.
And Austin was saying, so what the heart or conscience tells us, and we shut that, then we suffer terribly. So what the heart or conscience tells us, and we shut that, then we suffer terribly.
I think there was a common question on this side, like earlier. I don't know if you took it.
Mm-hmm. So, Azim, would you like to expand your comment?
Maybe after that, it seems like
Sure.
you can see his face, but it seems like Abdurrahman has some doubts and questions.
Okay. Then
After that,
Azim, we are going to address Abdurrahman's problems.
Sure, definitely, inshallah. No, so I was trying to understand this first sentence when it says, so Satan first casts a doubt into the heart. So some false idea may be coming to my heart, and then, my heart kind of validates it, right? And it says, hey, this is your imagination. It's not real. Just, don't take it as something that is real. And if I don't listen to that, if I really don't listen to my conscience or my heart as what it's trying to tell me, then that doubt, whatever that idea is, something that is going to haunt me, is going to hurt me. That's how it will become, like the word abuse. I was trying to figure out how it's working. So I was thinking, okay, if you don't listen to your heart, then that doubt will gain more strength. It will become something that is going to be really hurting you in your existence. Did that clarify it, Abdurrahman?
Jazakallah khair. Abdurrahman, do you have a question, comment in general?
He had a question earlier or comment earlier. You do it.
Okay.
So I guess why I was frowning. Was I frowning? I don't know. I'm just trying to find a balance in my life, because this also, I could twist this to sound like, just live your life kind of. And when these thoughts come to you that you don't enjoy, don't attribute them to yourselves. Just be like, this is from Satan. I shouldn't think about it. Like in these discussions, especially in discussions, that's when I usually have the most questions. And when I start having these thoughts that make me feel uneasy. And if I follow this thinking, then this would be like, maybe I should stop attending these discussions, because that's when I start having questions. And, I should be like, okay, I should just live a more easy life, just cruise or something. Don't come to these discussions. And I was just trying to find a balance. That's why I was feeling...
You would do a great favor for yourself.
I guess, but at the end of the day, you fall off a cliff if you just try to keep ignoring these things or whatever. Eventually, it would just, I don't know, hurt, or it wouldn't work. That's what I was thinking about.
So I guess in here, it's not about, so the trick in here is, am I accepting this as a true statement or as a question? So there's a difference between them. Because especially when it comes to this abuse or swearing word, whatever, they are statements. So this first aspect is trying to make a distinction between them. So, for example, if I have a Passat, handmade 2001,
You wish.
then, I mean, if somebody comes and says that your car is too old and you should get rid of this car, like I don't know, somebody who's jealous of such a handmade car. So, I mean, I might take it as a question. I can say, well, maybe, maybe not, but yeah, it might sound okay to question it. But this would be just in the state of a question. But if it is like, yeah, this car is horrible, this is what my friend said, then if this sort of a feeling starts occurring in me, this is something different. I mean, I'm not taking it now as a question. I'm taking it as if I already arrived to a judgment. Or a better example, secretary in your department sends an email.
Just hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking, not real life. The secretary sends the entire department an email saying that spring is coming. So please take a shower every day.
Where do you find such
Hypothetically speaking.
such examples?
Real life. Anyway. Then you can take it as this, well, okay, I mean, it's likely, it's possible. Summer is coming, people are sweating. And I mean, let's take it serious. Or I can take it into another extreme and say that, oh, the secretary sent this email to the entire department just because of me. She's actually thinking that I am stinky. Now this is a statement, and I am starting to get obsessed with it. Of course, there's no reality behind that. So this is something different. And this suggestion itself is starting to take over me. So in this first aspect, he's saying that the sign that these are not your statements is that you dislike them. So make this distinction in here. Not to say that totally ignore it as a question or anything like that, because it came there because I was ignorant about this topic. Maybe I was ignorant for not taking shower, whatever. This is why now I am starting to become overly worried about what if it was talking about me. But if I'm conscious about it, if I know the limits, first I will consider it as this is a serious issue. It might really cause trouble for some people. So the secretary was rightfully sending this email, let's say. But then I would say, okay, I did my job. Things are under control. Continue the life. But instead, what I can do is the other two options are, I might get overly obsessed, or I can totally ignore secretary's email and keep being stinky. So I guess neither end. So because for the first aspect, to me, I repeated a lot, but the summary is, it's not a statement that you agree upon. If you would like to take it as a question, yeah, for sure, take it as a question. But no, use it as a question to be answered, look for an answer, not to be heavily crushed under it as if, oh, somehow I arrived to this conclusion, and now that means I am doomed and I'm going to burn in hell, whatever sort of psychology. No need for that. Okay, any other comments? We have 5 minutes, 5 to 10.
Practical suggestion. If you are so worried about the car, like whether you locked it or not, instead of using a handmade German car, just go with the Japanese so you don't have to worry about it at all.
It closed itself?
If it is a stone, then you wouldn't worry about it.
Yes. This is what rich people say. Okay.
I guess overall message is here, don't feel bad just because you have these bad ideas or bad thoughts from time to time in your mind. Because they don't belong to you. They're there for a purpose, but they're not your judgment.
Despair or hopelessness is a greater danger and can damage you as a person or as a human being way more than you happen to have some issues, discomfort with your creator. Because if you cut your hope from him, I think that's why verse we seek refuge with him, right? If you give up on the hope of seeking refuge with him, the mission is, as far as the whisperings goes, mission is accomplished. Cut your connection with him already.
Yes, Abraham, you have a questioning. I'm reading your face.
Oh my God. Should wear a mask. No, I think I have no more questions.
But it seems like at least you have comments, not questions, but comments.
Well, I guess I found maybe an answer. I was thinking, let's say I was an atheist, not an atheist, I was Muslim, but I had thoughts of God didn't exist, and I had thoughts that God didn't exist, and I was thinking, how would I apply the first aspect here? I guess I'd be no, that's from Satan or something. Don't believe it. But then I was thinking about Yusuf's thing, take the question, but don't take the statement. I can just take this question I have that, I have this question that maybe God doesn't exist, but I shouldn't take it as a statement that, hey, God doesn't exist. Now I should feel terrible that I have such a thought in me. So I think that the question was answered for me.
Fariha is making a comment. So a judgment is not essentially real then. It's a means to confirm the truth. I do make judgments, but I need to assess them. So not exactly like that.
Yeah, I think he's using judgment as the final conclusion. He's saying that all these imaginary thoughts are not judgments. So if they were judgments, then you would be responsible for them, and they will be attributed to you because they are your judgment. But he's saying that these imaginary thoughts are not judgments. So you don't have to take the responsibility of them.
If they are not established in the hearts, they are not judgments.
Yes. And how do I distinguish these? First of all, why do I think that they are judgments? Because the way that verbally they are formed, they sound like a judgment. This is what I think, I am passing a judgment. Because if they were verbally worded as a doubt, it would be in the form of a question. So when it's a question, my perception says, well, this is a question I might accept, I might not accept it. But when it is formed in the form of a statement, like cursing, I can think that it is from me. Now the author is saying that, going into, if you like, human psychology, saying that there is your human imagination, which is not always bound to your will. So if a statement comes to your imagination, it's not necessarily the case that you accept it. And then, how do I know that then, if this is an accepted judgment or not an accepted judgment? And he says, the evidence that it's not your judgment is you are disturbed by it.
Those ugly words are not the words of your heart because your heart is saddened and sorry at them. Yeah. So this is the evidence that it's not your judgment.
Yeah. Because otherwise, my judgments are my judgments. I mean, this is, I guess, granted.
And judgments are real.
Judgments are real. So in this case, though, this one is like a judgment that is, if you like, pictured in my imagination. So it doesn't belong to me, though. So if Fariha, would you like to make any comments about that? If not, we continue. A conclusion then.
So far, so good. So yeah, if I take judgment as just being a conclusion, something I derive at based on whatever thoughts or ideas occur, then yeah, that makes sense.
And then, Nursi is again making a statement in there. Rather, they come from the inner faculty situated near the heart, which is a means of satanic whisperings. As if now he is describing something about human, saying that in yourself, in human's creation, there is a faculty which is situated in your heart, and of course, metaphorically speaking, but as if Satan whispers, or you are the receiver, as if it's like an ear, but since it is, as Nursi says, situated near heart, you think as if it's coming from your heart. But you are a receiver in there, you are not a speaker in there. But since it is located close to your heart, meaning that, I guess in here the heart means my own convictions. But since it comes in the disguise of my own convictions, they are very similar, sort of. This is why I am getting excited about it, feeling as if I said it. But then Nursi says the harm of scruples is imagining the harm, thinking that this is harmful. So this shouldn't be the case. Okay. Any comments, concluding remarks?
I think Birkan has a comment.
Yes, let's listen to Brother Birkan for a concluding remark. Abdurrahman saw some traces of a question in his face, or a comment. I don't know what Abdurrahman saw.
Trace of concluding remarks.
Okay, trace of concluding remarks. Go ahead.
Like at least what I can say is that why this first aspect is important, because it, I guess, gives us like a branch to hold. Because we all have these, the doubts. Some of them we like, some of them we don't like, and we have all these bad ideas. Sometimes in form of fear, sometimes in form of the ugliness or hate. We have these ideas. And author is saying that there's no reason to hate yourself. There's no reason to get lost in them. They don't belong to you. They are like messengers. They're coming for a purpose, and the purpose is not to stick to them and take them as they are yours. Don't be overwhelmed. And this is something I need. Like, I need to be reminded that all these bad ideas and so on, they're coming, they're going. So I shouldn't be worried. I shouldn't lose hope, let's say, in myself. I shouldn't lose the hope in my Creator.
Then let's conclude inshallah.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.